Good morning, afternoon, and evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the post-2020 webinar, the 9th of its kind and the first for 2020, which promises to be a very busy and exciting year leading up to COP15 in China. Like I mentioned, this is the first webinar for 2020. We had a very busy and productive and successful 2019, everything related to nature and biodiversity in cities. And we're very much looking forward to what 2020 has to offer. And like I said, leading up to COP15 in China. Next slide, please, Pedro. So the main aim of today's webinar is just to take stock, look at some key highlights from 2019, and yeah, looking at the plans for 2020, mainly around local and subnational government networks. And we have an interesting panel lined up today. Next slide, please, Pedro. It shouldn't be too long a webinar, but thank you for making the time for joining us. Just to remind you guys that the webinar is being recorded, and the presentations, all presentations that will be made today, together with the link to this recording, will be made available to you. So we're going to have 4 presentations, after which we'll have an opportunity for discussions and questions, the last session of the webinar. So you guys will be welcome to make comments, ask any questions of clarity, whatever the case might be. So we'll get to that stage later today. So just to introduce myself, I'm Ryan Fisher. I'm a professional officer at ICLEI Africa. Our panelists include Kobe Brandt, who's our regional director and the global director for ICLEI Cities Biodiversity Center. We'll also be joined through recordings by Renata Gomez, representing Regions 4, and Mr. Teru Kisuna from Mr. Teru Kesunu, from Goals, will be joined us for this morning session, but we recorded his presentation, so we'll play that recording in his time slot a little bit later. And then Robbie from the Committee of the Regions, European, will be joining us shortly. Robbie is actually scheduled to present second, but he hasn't joined us yet. So as and when he does, we will move the presentations around accordingly. Next slide, please. So just the short agenda for today, as I mentioned, we'll have the 4 presentations from the speakers who I just introduced, and then towards the end, we'll have some time for questions and discussions. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Kobe Brandt for our first presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ryan, and thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. I think, as Ryan will also mention once again, we'll share the link with you. These monthly webinars will carry on. It started last year and will carry on right through up until COP15, the big moment for nature and biodiversity that will be held in Kunming, China in October. And they'll probably intensify as we need to share more information closer to Kunming. So they will be available on our YouTube channel as well as our local and regional government website, the roadmap website to COP15. So I'm going to really just talk a little bit about progress to date and looking ahead for what we can expect in future years. So maybe you can move to the next slide for me, please, Pedro. Yes, so a huge development that I'd like to share here with you is that at the end of last year, when the Global Task Force of Local and Regional Governments General Assembly met, it was agreed that ICLEI would play a focal point. There was interest in the nature and biodiversity space from the Global Task Force members, and ICLEI will from now on act as a focal point to the Global Task Force informing all these members. These are city and regions networks you're looking at here, in terms of biodiversity and nature-based solutions and all things nature, and also make sure that the necessary links to the Global Task Force other agendas such as climate and culture, etc., that those are made well, and that biodiversity and nature is mainstreamed also into the work of the Global Task Force. So we invite all members of the Global Task Force to join our webinars from now on. You're more than welcome. Many of you have actually been already actively supporting and engaging in the advocacy process that we've been leading since last year, specifically the Committee of Regions and Regions 4 and other organizations that we work with closely. But we welcome all new members of the task force to this outreach and this advocacy roadmap that we'll carrying on. So if we move to the next slide, you will see this is a timeline that doesn't highlight everything. It's a very, very busy advocacy and outreach and mobilization year for us, and we're in the midst of it. But this timeline just highlights some of the key meetings that our constituency will be presenting our voice and our interests to the global community, as these meetings are all instrumental in formulating the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, which will be adopted in Kunming in China in April 2020. So already in 2019, I want to just highlight two big events. The one took place in Montreal in November, Substa 23, which is the technical meeting of the CBD, of the Convention on Biological Diversity. And what was significant there was that we had a first engagement under the auspices of our global ambassador for local biodiversity, Mayor Valerie Plante from Montreal, who hosted with the CBD Secretariat and ICLEI and Regions 4, hosted an engagement with the parties of the convention, in other words, the nation states. And it was very well attended. A very active meeting took place where each of us shared our ambitions in terms of what we'd like to see in terms of decisions and mainstreaming the city and regions agenda into the new global biodiversity framework. So there was broad consensus in the room that we need to actually have a consolidated new plan of action type decision. We know that in Nagoya in 2010, the parties agreed for the first time ever in any UN convention, I might add, that there should be a dedicated decision on cities and regions. And this took shape in the plan of action, decision 1022, sorry. That was that decision was running from 2011 to 2020. So it's coming to an end now in 2020. But that plan of action decision sparked a number of initiatives and activities by national governments, regional governments, local governments, networks like ourselves, other actors, and it really gave us an institutional home collectively under the CBD for our collective work in cities and regions on biodiversity and nature. So we need to replace it with something stronger, more ambitious, bolder, because we believe that the contribution that cities and regions can and should be making in a post-2020 world needs to be upscaled and outscaled dramatically. So we're calling for a much stronger decision to replace the plan of action, and then also we're calling for mainstreaming cities and regions throughout the key decision aspects related to the local and subnational level in the GBF. Montreal was a very significant meeting, and then of course the COP 25, the climate COP in Spain, in Madrid. We've seen there for the first time at an unprecedented rate that the nature and climate discussions are coming together and converging very nicely, that we're talking about nature and climate in the same, at the same sort of level, and both being solution oriented and understanding the symbiosis between the two crises that we are facing at the moment. And there is a greater awareness, unprecedented awareness now, that one cannot address climate change or nature in isolation from one another. And we really saw that coming through very strongly in all our deliberations at the COP in Madrid. And this for us was something that we really want to build on in the year ahead. And it's also coming out in many of the papers that are being released by other stakeholder groups. So for our constituency, we understand that a city and a region is a perfect nexus where this type of convergence and this type of nexus approach is so possible and so doable and necessary. So we're looking for systemic type of solutions that address both nature and climate at the same time. I'm not going to go into details. You can have a look at these. I just want to point out that some of our colleagues are actually in Sao Paulo right now, and there will be a declaration released, I believe today, coming out of that meeting that summarizes the very important deliberations that were held there, high-level deliberations for not only South America, but it was a globally CBD globally endorsed event that took place there. And in our next webinar, we will get direct feedback from our colleagues that are there right now. In next week, we will be participating at the World Urban Forum. I'm hoping to meet many of you there, and please look out for our nature sessions during the World Urban Forum. And that's just ahead of the Open-Ended Working Group 2, which is taking place in Rome later this month, where again, we're hoping for a strong contingency of subnational and local governments to come and join us there when we are, where we will be in direct engagement as a constituency with the parties who are starting the formal negotiations during this Open-Ended Working Group. So hope to see you in Rome or Abu Dhabi, or definitely elsewhere during the course of the year. But if we don't meet in person, please, this is your space, this is our space where we as a constituency can talk about and also share latest updates and information. I'm going to end just by saying that we, on behalf of ICLEI and with inputs from Regions 4 and the Committee of Regions and goals, we have made inputs into the first zero draft that was released by the two co-chairs of the COP. This document was released in early January, and comment period closed at the end of January, 31st January. So our comment went in, and we're very happy to share that. It will also be posted on our roadmap website. So please have a look at the website if you want to see what we have presented back to the co-chairs. There are some great ambitious statements in that document, but at the same time, we feel that reference to local and subnational governments need to be much stronger and also widespread throughout the document. And again, definitely we pointed out to the call for a new strong decision, dedicated decision on cities and regions. I'm going to end there. If we can just go to the next slide. Please, Bruno, if we can just move along to the next slide. This is something I'm not going to go into detail, but just remember that the post-2020 framework is going to focus on the vision for 2050, and all activities will fall under that. And as a last point from us, just to make you aware of these upcoming dates for these webinars, please join us at any one or all of them. and let us know if you want to present from your city or your region or your institution. This is a platform where all of us can share what we are doing and also share and raise our ambition together for taking our active role in the post-2020 world. So with that, thank you very much, and back over to you, Ryan.
Thank you very much, Kobe. Very insightful, and as you guys can hear, 2020 plans and promises to be a very exciting and busy year for all of us. So we're very much looking forward to that and your continued participation in these webinars going forward. So we'll see on screen now, our next webinar is scheduled for later in March, and obviously we'll share more relevant information closer to the time. So please do watch the space. We're now going to go to our second presentation, and it's going to be Roberto Rinaldi on behalf of Robbie for the presentation from the Committee of the Regions European. So Roberto, over to you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Fantastic. I will just then connect my screen and start with the presentation straight away. My name is Roberto Rinaldi, and I'm the Policy Officer at the Committee of the Regions. I'm working specifically on biodiversity and climate change. And what I want to show you today very briefly is the work of the COR with respect to the to biodiversity. And I will just spend a few words on the Committee of the Regions, what is it and how it works, just for you to understand who we are, if you're not familiar with it. And then I would like to provide some explanation about the contribution of the Committee of the Regions within the European Union context. So talking a little bit about the European Union biodiversity strategy, and then just a quick overview on the activities that the Committee of the Regions does outside the European Union. So the involvement of our institution with the preparatory process of the post-2020 policy framework. So let's go a little bit into the details. So the Committee of the Regions is basically the European Union Assembly of Regional and Local Representatives. It has been created in 1994, and it has its mission has been to represent and promote the interests of local and regional authorities in relation to the European decision-making process. And this is because in the European Union, 70%, 70, of all EU legislation is actually implemented by local and regional authorities. So this is why it is important to have an official voice of regions and cities within the policy-making process. And it is really important for our members. We have 350 members who are local and regionally elected politicians from all over the EU countries. Here on the screen, you can see the figure of the Committee of the Regions up to last year. Now, after the Brexit and after the end of the mandate, we will have a new distribution among the different political groups. However, what's interesting to know is that the Committee of the Regions adopts official documents. They're called opinions, and these opinions are documents that we then send to the other European Union institutions for their consideration, and the European Commission has to formally reply to the points that we raise with regards to the different topics. And these different topics that we work on are distributed among 6 commissions, and the topic of biodiversity is under the Commission for Environment, Climate Change and Energy. In 2018, the Committee of the Regions already adopted an opinion on biodiversity towards its participation to COP14. And this year we are doing the same towards the COP15. We are working on an opinion that deals with the European strategy, but also with the COP15. And what we are specifically working on this year is shown here on the screen. These are the main topics that we are now discussing. First of all, we want to put forward recommendations on how subnational governments can be involved in the implementation, the monitoring, evaluation, and feedback of the post-2020 biodiversity policy framework. This should include formulating recommendations on the formal recognition of local and regional authorities alongside other parties in the United Nations, but also in the European Union documents. We also want to discuss how to tackle the drivers of biodiversity loss, as identified in the IPBES report of last year, and also on the report by the European Environmental Agency called the European Environment State and Outlook 2020. It's a very interesting publication on the knowledge for the transition to a sustainable Europe, and it has a specific chapter on biodiversity that we will consider for our opinion. Then we also would like to collect and share the knowledge on existing funding and financial tools for biodiversity action by local and regional authorities. And we want to understand also what are the expectations of these authorities for their future development. And we are doing this at the European level, but of course the structured and also the main fundings could then be applied in a broader scope to other countries. And then we also wish to discuss the available solutions, and we mainly refer to nature-based solutions, but also we will reflect on actually what it means to have a biodiversity management at subnational level. And here we will focus also on the aspect of how local and regional authorities could contribute to the national action, either formally or informally. We want also to propose how subnational governments should communicate the new biodiversity policy and policies, and this is not only at European level, but it's also at global level. And then we have a reflection on how the new biodiversity framework might interact with other existing agendas. And I'm not referring only to the UN agenda, such as the Paris Agreement, such as the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, but I'm also talking about, for example, in Europe, the European Green Deal. And finally, the last focus, the last points that will be included in the CR opinion would be how to mobilize the citizens and other actors locally, and how to build alliances locally and across the different levels, as well as between local and regional authorities. And this relates to the building up or strengthening alliances among the different actors, because very often in the case of biodiversity, we have seen the need for specific expertise or for specific needs that very often one single authority could not by itself bear the cost or find. But if there is the possibility to actually share that expertise among a group or an alliance of local authorities, then in that case we not only would have a cost saving, but it would also increase the effectiveness of the action. So these are the messages that will be included in the COR opinion for the EU biodiversity strategy, but also relates to the post-2020 policy framework at the global level. And what we're going to do, we're not only working on the content, but we're also working on disseminating the content. And this goes through not only by the advisory committee for subnational governments to the UN CBD. The Committee of the Regions is part of this advisory committee, but we also try to disseminate our key messages through a list of events that happen within Europe, but also globally. Some of the ones that you can see now on the screens on this table have already been mentioned previously, but here there are also some additional European events for your knowledge. And I look forward to any contribution or any feedback, either for co-organizing a session on one of these events, or more generally in content-wise, for the COR opinion. And do not hesitate to contact me or Robbie Beaver by the email address that you can see now on the screen. I thank you for your attention, and I give back the floor to Ryan.
Thank you so much, Rinaldi. Very good presentation, very insightful. We're really looking forward to seeing how your ambition spans out for this year. And of course, we value the partnership and looking forward to continue working with Committee of the Regions going forward. So thank you very much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, the next two presentations are pre-recordings from Renata, and the next will be from Teru. So just bear with us if there might be some glitches in sound, etc. Just a reminder that these recordings together with the presentations made will be made available to you after the webinar. So with that, I'm going to ask Pedro to please play the pre-recording for Renata.
Hello, everyone. I'm Renata Gomez. I'm with Regions 4, an organization that represents subnational governments worldwide. We are also, together with the government of Quebec, the coordinators of the Advisory Committee on Subnational Governments and Biodiversity, which is an official body that represents subnational governments at the heart of the Convention on Biological Diversity. Today, I will be talking about the actions the Advisory Committee is taking towards the post-2020 process, and in particular, on the road to COP15. All right, so firstly, I would like to mention the very important upcoming opportunities for subnational governments to participate and to share their views and experiences and expectations on the post-2020 process. The very first one is a consultation session that is organized by the Committee of the Regions, the European Committee of the Regions, called Biodiverse Cities and Regions Beyond 2020 at the UN CBD COP15 and in the next EU strategy. It's taking place the 30th of January, and its main objective is to gather experiences from regions in Europe to inform the EU, the next biodiversity strategy of the European Union, but also to provide insights on what the European Union can possibly contribute to the post-2020 process, and in particular, to hear the voice from stakeholders such as, Regions 4, the Advisory Committee, these, global initiatives that represent subnational governments. Also, the next big opportunity in which the Advisory Committee is going to be present is the Bio 2020 Brazilian Perspectives on the Post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. It's an event organized by the government of Sao Paulo state, together, of course, with ICLEI and the city of Sao Paulo and many other partners that are gathering, as the name says, the perspectives of Brazilian regions and local governments on the post-2020 process, again, to inform the CBD about their very particular and special circumstances. Also, of course, as you probably are well aware, the second meeting of the open-ended working group meeting that is taking place sometime in February. It's also a great opportunity in which the Advisory Committee is going to be present its coordinators, the government of Quebec, is going to be participating and again sharing the views of the advisory committee. In this occasion, in an aligned manner with our other constituencies that also represent local governments, ICLEI included, also the group of leading subnational governments to the Haiti biodiversity targets, goals. It's also going to be there. So it's going to be a very good opportunity for subnationals and locals to get together and jointly send a message to the CBD. And the other event I wanted to highlight is a thematic workshop organized by the government of Scotland called a Workshop for Subnational, Regional and Local Governments on the Role in the CBD Post-2020 framework. Is happening at the beginning of April. It's again going to be a great opportunity to inform the CBD, the post-2020 process, in particular, what's coming after the second meeting of the open-ended working group, as it is straight after the meeting. Okay, so what the advisory committee is contributing in particular? Well, I wanted to highlight what our vision is when it comes to the Global Biodiversity Outlook. It's 5th edition. As you may know, the draft was shared with the stakeholders and all the parties to receive comments, and the advisory committee did so. We shared some our perspectives on what the draft contained, and what we basically suggested the CBD is, number one, to make explicit and further reference to the importance of subnational governments as key in articulating national policies and programs, because we feel that the current draft is not reflecting that relevance, that importance when it comes to implementation. Again, we recommend the GBO5 to take a comprehensive approach, particularly in the scenarios it proposes, and we suggest to highlight or to propose a bigger focus on the importance of urban-rural linkages, and of course the various levels of government involved in urban-rural linkages, processes, and approaches. We also suggested to consider subnational biodiversity strategies and action plans, as well as the national programs and actions, and the progress subnational governments have achieved towards the Haiti biodiversity targets, as reported to the CBD by the group of leading subnational governments at SBI2, in which they share a very important report on the progress goals members have made towards the ABTs. When it comes to the zero draft of the Global Biodiversity Framework, also the advisory committee has gathered a common voice around that and has shared some very specific recommendations to the CBD, among which are, well, we recommend, again, a specificity on the means of the participation of subnational governments within the post-2020 global framework, and particularly its 20 action targets, because it's not clear and it's not specific how subnational governments can contribute, although it's recognized. It's not further explained on the how. Also, we recommend the inclusion of the subnational level of government throughout the text, including in the sections of the purpose, the theory of change, of course, the action targets, as I mentioned before, the implementation support mechanisms, enabling conditions, and many more. I mean, subnational governments and local authorities are a fundamental part of the whole implementation process and should be considered throughout the text, is what we feel. We also are suggesting that the framework considered the role of national governments in the implementation of nature-based solutions and mainstreaming biodiversity, as well as the link between the 20 global targets, the national commitments, and of course, the implementation on the ground. When it comes to mainstreaming, I wanted to recall that the Regions 4, together with the advisory committee members, produced a report, particularly on mainstreaming biodiversity. You can see it on your screens. It gathers the experience of all the members of the advisory committee on the practice of mainstreaming biodiversity. It's very interesting, and we trust it actually informs the CBD. We're going to be submitting this document as an information document at the subsidiary body of implementation meeting that is taking place in May this year, later this year. So it's going to be good for us to be part of that. To continue with what we are commenting on the zero draft, we also recommended something, and if you have attended the previous webinars, I have been sharing updates. This is a very crucial request that we have been making the CBD and its parties throughout the post-2020 process, as well as ICLEI shares this view with the advisory committee. And it's basically, we are recommending on a new decision that renews the plan of action on subnational government, cities, and other local authorities for biodiversity that ends in 2020. We believe this is a major instrument to express how the implementation process of the new framework can be done, and it's a great opportunity that we have to renew these new decisions. So this is another request we are including. And finally, we are suggesting that, as well as national priorities, the framework should consider the very complex and diverse priorities that take place at the local and subnational level of governments, as also very important when it comes to the final outcome and the final objective that we are all pursuing, which is stopping biodiversity loss and of course achieving the Renewal action targets for biodiversity at a global scale. So basically, this is what we are going to be inputting to the CBD in those milestone events that I shared at the very beginning. I want to thank you for your attention, and I would like to remind you that you can find out more information on what we do on biodiversity at the website that you are seeing on your screens, regions4.org. My name is Renata Gomez, and thank you very much, team and everyone on ICLEI team for having me.
So thank you for also to Renata in her absence. Very insightful presentation. Very interesting perspectives there on the zero draft. So and we like to see the emphasis on local and subnational government. So well done to the Regions 4 team. Our last presentation for the day is Mr. Teru Kisuna of Goals, and this is also a pre-recording from this morning's session. So again, just bear with us for technical issues surrounding sound, etc. So over to Teru.
Thank you very much for giving me such an opportunity to presentate the initiative of IG and the goals for 2020. Thank you very much. Okay. Before moving to the plan of goals, I'd like to show some of our recent achievement in Aichi. Aichi biodiversity strategy was adopted after COP10, which adopted the Aichi biodiversity targets with the 2050 vision, living in harmony with nature, and 2020 mission as the actions to hold the biodiversity loss. And in the Aichi Biodiversity Strategy 2020, our strategy, we advocate the Aichi method, which is formed by ecosystem network councils and also Aichi mitigation systems. And we have developed some tools to support this Aichi method. And in ecosystem network councils, we have a lot of social entities like universities and the business sectors, local government, and also NPOs. The total number of the entity is about 250. And as 2020 is a special year for us, as the end of our strategy and also Aichi biodiversity targets. This year, we're making effort to wrap up the achievement and also raise public awareness. So the first attempt was held in 11 and 12 January at Aichi Nagoya Biodiversity Expo. It was a kickoff event of the nationwide UNDP wrapping up relay. So as you know, we hosted the Asian Pacific consultation, regional consultation, just a year ago. It was the kickoff of the regional consultation workshop just after COP14. So Aichi Nagoya is always the place of beginning. And this event was co-organized with the Ministry of Japan, Ministry of Environment, Japan, the Nagoya City, and also Japan Committee for UNDP. And our Governor Omura gave his comment at the beginning of the event. And this was a very complex event. And we held a previous campaign, the photo contest in Instagram. We have more than 1,000 works from Instagram and emails. And these photos are the best photos chosen by the photographers. All pictures showed the beautiful scene of Aichi. So we'd like to utilize these pictures later afterward. And in plenary symposium, we had a keynote speech from Sakana-kun. Sakana-kun is a very popular scientist and who can showcase the wonder of nature very, very nicely and very popular for, especially for children. And afterward, we had a panel discussion by people working for biodiversity in our prefecture and also young idols in our prefectures. And we had also scientific or thematic thematic sessions. 4 sessions we had. Session 1 is the scientific evidence. And this, you can see one example of a report by a researcher about the freshwater turtles. And in this map of peninsula, Chita Peninsula, the researcher investigate the proportion of the turtles. And red sign is the invasive alien species, and yellow and green is the endemic turtles. And we can see that during these 15 years, the proportion of the turtles dramatically changed, especially in the south part, the most remote part from the city of Nagoya. So this such result show us we should do afterward. So invasive species is getting more problem in our prefecture. Also, in the session 3, which was on the grace of biodiversity. This photo is from an organic farmer who is standing in the center of the group. He have been working on organic agriculture, and when he increased the land, he asked handicapped people to work with him. So then he could increase his farmland, but also the handicapped people get healed themselves. It was a very amazing effect of the nature, I think. So this also show us the people we should collaborate with in the future, I think. And we had more booth exhibition or even the food corner, which provided fried alien fish, or also honey produced by sorry, in an urban high school. The high school student even sold the ice cream themselves, right? And this event have a long tail mechanism with itself. We have produced a specific logo for 2020 for common use in IG. You can see a single leaf logo mark behind the scene of COP10. And now, 10 years after COP10, so we put 9 more leaves and also fruits, and this means the achievement for 10 years. Also, we are going to collect best practices and good practices in IG, and we are planning to bring it to COP15 in the booklet. All right, and also we are now working on new strategy for us. As the current strategy is get to the end this year, we need new strategy. So about the new strategy, we consider a lot about the new post-2020 global biodiversity framework, and also, of course, the IPBES report or GBO5 also, and also we are considering the SDGs like grace of biodiversity. And also, of course, we need to stand on the achievements so far and also science and evidence-based. And to apply the principle on the ground for us, we are thinking of upgrading the Aichi method for mainstreaming, and also define the value of nature with scientific method and communication with people. The picture on the right hand is a scene of workshop with the residents to find the treasure of nature in their areas. Also, next slide. Yes, this is a map of Aichi, full of the important point in the nature. And next, this is a map of protected areas. So we can find some areas without protection, and that will show us that we need to make some mechanism, create some mechanism to protect a good site or good ecosystem, but not protected right now. So we also need to enhance partnership and breakthrough sectionalisms, encourage municipalities, also enhance SEPA and capacity building, also develop compensation mitigation method, and also take advantage of the progress of science and technology. So that so we have just began to work with new strategy, but I expect we can bring the outline of our new strategy to COP15. All right, let's go to the goals plan for 2020. Now, goals is trying to compile a report on subnational experience on vertical integration in line with the guideline which ICLEI and the SCBD published in 2017, and you can see the guidelines at a URL in the bottom. And we are planning to post it to SBI3, which we recognize a very, very important conference for COP15. Our report will showcase concrete initiatives of each member along the 13 guidelines which the ICLEI's book showed to us. And also, we are planning to have a side event of goals on this report along SBI3 in next May. And the second point is the goals is operational partner of the advisory committee of subnational government. So we will support the advisory committee and also collaborate with ICLEI or other subnational entities like ECHO to help a new plan for local and subnational government should be adopted in COP15. To the open-ended working group 2 in this February in Rome, IG is attending too, and expecting to have opportunity to participate to discuss one new global biodiversity framework. And also we are expecting to have meeting with other relevant organizations such as ICLEI, regions, and ICO. And we expect this is a very fruitful and strategically important meetings for us. And fourth point, very unfortunately, we cannot attend to the Scotland consultation on April because the April is the just the beginning day of the fiscal year in Japan, so everything could change. So we cannot be there, but we recognize this consultation is so important for all of us that we'd like to search for possible method to contribute to the conference as goals somehow. And along COP15 in October in China, Governor Omura is planning to attend as far as he can save the date. And also IG is planning to have a side event and exhibition of goals if possible. And also we are thinking to bring some youth, young people who are active on the ground. So I hope we can show the achievement and importance of subnational government in COP15 also. And I forgot to show in this slide, but I'd like to share a very happy news for goals that the Jiangsu province of China has just entered to goals. So we have a friend in China within goals right now. Okay, thank you very much.
Here we go. A big thank you to Teru as well in his absence. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a busy 2020 for gold as well. And we're also delighted to hear that the reach in China is actually growing. So well done to the goals team. So ladies and gentlemen, it seems that we are just out of time. Just a big thank you again to our panelists for availing themselves to join us today and present. Yeah, we're looking very much forward to a very productive 2020. Just a reminder that these webinars happen once a month, so please be on the lookout for those dates and more information around them, and please do share them with your colleagues and your peers far and wide so that we can ensure that we reach all relevant parties globally. And yeah, the next one is scheduled for the week of the 26th of March. So just watch the space for more details on that. And I think with that, colleagues, we can call this webinar to a close. Again, thank you very much for your participation. Just a reminder again that the presentations will be made available. So if you want to reach out to any of the speakers, please feel free to do so. And a recording or link of the recording of this webinar will be uploaded to our ICLEI YouTube channel as well. So you can find more information there. And then, as always, keep a lookout for our post-2020 roadmap and also our Cities with Nature platform. So please do reach out to us on the information on the screen right now. So if you have any further information or you would like to get in touch, please feel free to reach out to us. So with that, thank you very much. and everybody keep well so that the webinar comes to a close. Thank you.
Thank you.